Philadelphia Eagles begin training camp in 1 week from today, so now is the time to start looking at some storylines that are going on right now, as well as storylines to watch out for once camp gets going. And I think it's safe to say that this could be a really eventful and interesting training camp for the Eagles, as there's a lot of positional battles to watch, particular players to keep your eye on, and the potential is still there for the Eagles to make another big splash in the late stages of this offseason, but will they actually do that? So we're going to talk about all of that in this video today, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. So as we got closer and closer to the start of Eagles training camp, there was one question left unanswered, and that was when rookie cornerback out of Georgia Kelee Ringo would finally sign with the team, because every other rookie that the Eagles had selected in the draft had signed their contracts a while back, and Ringo had yet to do so, so we were all waiting to hear when the Eagles would officially finally sign Ringo, and some people were actually getting worried about there being some potential problems behind the scenes. However, I was never really worried about this because I knew that the signing would eventually happen, and yesterday it did, as the Philadelphia Eagles officially signed cornerback Kelee Ringo to a 4-year, $4 million contract, and all I have to say is, finally, it is about time. I feel like this probably dragged on for way longer than it should have, and I don't really know the reason for why that happened, but there was still never really any worry in my mind that this was eventually going to get done, and obviously it did. So now the question is, what kind of role is Ringo going to have for this Eagles team this year? Well, to be honest, I don't think he's going to have much of a role, just for the simple fact that, obviously he's a cornerback, and the Eagles are already pretty set at that position. Now, maybe if Avonte Maddox goes down with an injury, because he has been a player that has been pretty injury-plagued over the past couple seasons, maybe then Ringo will have an opportunity to step in and play there. So I guess we'll see, but more than likely he's not going to get much playing time this year. So then the next question you have to ask is, well, what kind of role can Ringo eventually carve out for himself on this team in the future? I mean, will he eventually become a starter for this team, and what position will that be at? Will it be at cornerback, which is obviously the position that he played in college and he was able to have so much success at, obviously being a 2-time national champion, being one of the better players on that Georgia defense, which is one of the best college defenses of all time? Or could we possibly see a positional change coming in the future with Kelee Ringo, because a lot of people have speculated that he has the physical tools and the ability to switch to safety, and that might be more of his natural position in the NFL. Plus, with the Eagles not necessarily knowing how their safety position is going to look, I mean, not even this season, let alone a few years down the road, who knows, maybe the best move for Ringo would be a switch to safety. I honestly don't know what's in store for Ringo these next couple seasons, so I guess we'll just have to see on that front. I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, but in regards to this year, no matter what his role is, I know he's going to come in and be ready for it, because he's been working really hard this offseason, and I just can't wait to see how he'll perform once he eventually gets his shot, because I legitimately think that he was one of the steals of this draft. But now that we've talked about what has already happened, let's talk about what is to come, because heading into training camp, we have a lot of positional battles set to take place, and arguably the most underrated one is the battle at the defensive tackle position, as we legitimately don't 100% know who are going to be the starting defensive tackles, because the Eagles have 3 guys who are very capable of being starters. Obviously, they got Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and of course, Jalen Carter. So the question going into camp is, who are the 2 guys that will win the starting jobs? Well, all 3 guys have a pretty good case, and while the 2 young guys will probably turn into building blocks for this Eagles defense at some point in the future, I think the guy who is the best case of the 3 to be a starter, at least this season, is the veteran Fletcher Cox, and this is for obvious reasons. Obviously, he's been a huge part of this Philadelphia Eagles team for years. He's been a cornerstone of this Eagles franchise, and he's become one of the better players in the history of this franchise. I mean, he's obviously a multiple-time Pro Bowler, a multiple-time All-Pro. He was one of the best players on the Eagles' first Super Bowl winning team of all time, and if not for Aaron Donald, you might be talking about Fletcher Cox as the best defensive tackle over the past decade or so in the entire NFL. And Fletcher Cox is obviously also a leader for this Eagles team. He's been that for a very long time. He definitely was that last year for the Eagles' second Super Bowl run in just 5 years, and he still does provide value when he's on the field. He obviously still had a very productive season last year, posting 7 sacks, which I don't think many people expected from him. And Fletcher Cox also does have one thing that the other 2 guys competing for the starting job at the defensive tackle position don't have, and that's a pretty sizable contract, as this year Fletcher Cox was a free agent and he signed a 1-year, $10 million deal to remain with the Philadelphia Eagles. And obviously the 2 other guys in Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter are both still on their rookie scale contracts, meaning that Fletcher Cox is easily the highest paid defensive tackle of the bunch. So when you look at all this, you look at the resume, you look at everything he's contributed to this Eagles team for a long time. With the contract on top of that, I think that it's more than likely that he ends up being a starter, at least at the beginning of the season for this Eagles team, and also he's going to have some loyalty from the coaching staff as he's been here longer than these other two guys, simply put. Which then leaves the two former Bulldogs to compete for the other starting spot, and honestly, as much as I love Carter and think that he's going to be a monster when he gets his full opportunity, I think Jordan Davis is going to ultimately end up winning the starting job, and this is simply for the reason that he's already been here for a year. He's had some NFL experience. He's already adjusted himself to be able to have success at the NFL level. Obviously, when the Eagles picked him number 13 overall, they expected that he would be a big part of this Eagles defense in the near future. Last year, he was obviously behind guys like Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, so now heading into this year, I think pretty much everyone expects him to have a much bigger role, and he's earned it. He obviously showed flashes last year in the small opportunities that he had, and again, he's more NFL ready, so I think that he's going to ultimately end up starting, meaning that the Eagles' two starting defensive tackles would be Fletcher Cox and Jordan Davis. So as for Carter, that doesn't mean that I don't think he has a chance to start in his rookie year, because at the end of the day, these are just my predictions, and he very well could beat out either one of these guys at camp and be a starter this year. And while he was one of the best players in the entire draft and he impressed all offseason, including in OTAs, I just feel like he still, at least coming in, probably has the weakest case to start right away out of these three guys. But still, nonetheless, Carter is going to be one of the most interesting Eagles to watch during training camp and this preseason, and an article written a couple months ago by Brandon Lee Gowton echoes this as he said, quote, "I think you have to go back to Donovan's rookie year, 24 summers ago at Lehigh, to find a rookie that brought this much buzz with him to training camp. Part of it is the two national championship teams he was a part of at Georgia. Part of it is how we all knew the Eagles wanted him all along. Part of it is the videos we've all seen from OTAs of the kid running around in shirts and shorts and looking like a beast. The kid has all the tools, and he's going to be the story of training camp." And I definitely think there is some very real merit to this statement, and I just can't wait to see how Carter does at camp and during preseason games, and who knows, maybe he could end up starting. But what do you guys think? What role will Jalen Carter have this year for this Eagles team? Will he start, or will guys like Cox and Davis at least initially get the nod? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, another Eagles rookie from Georgia to watch during training camp is going to be Nolan Smith, and obviously, I just think a lot of people are really excited to see what the Eagles have in Nolan Smith. I think he was a huge steal for the Eagles to get him at number 30, and I think he can develop into a franchise cornerstone for this Eagles defense, and I think already you're starting to see him become a fan favorite among Eagles fans. I mean, he hasn't even played a game for the Eagles yet. We're not even in training camp yet, but just the things that he said in his interviews, press conferences, the mentality that he seems to have of just trying to work really, really hard and get better every single day, and just the positivity that he brings, there's definitely been a lot of buzz about Nolan Smith this offseason, and he's been working really, really hard. He was at Von Miller's Pass Rush Summit, and you've just seen videos and clips of him all offseason working insanely hard to be ready for his first season in the NFL. And now I'm going to be really curious to see just how much of a role he can carve out for himself, because the Eagles are pretty deep at the edge rusher position, so there's definitely going to be a limited amount of snaps that he's able to get, at least in his rookie season, and maybe his performance at training camp or in preseason games is going to be a factor in determining how much playing time he gets this year. So he's definitely going to be someone to watch, and I'm just really excited to see how Smith performs once camp gets going here. But sticking with the defense, we got to talk about the linebacker battle that the Eagles are set to have, because this is probably the weakest position on the Eagles roster heading into training camp, and I feel like we honestly just don't know who's going to end up starting when September rolls around. Now, we obviously know that Nakobe Dean is going to start at the Mike linebacker position. That's pretty much all but been confirmed. Now, I actually recently just did a video talking about how Nakobe Dean could potentially be the key to unlocking the Eagles defense's full potential this year, so you can go check that out after this video if you want. But Dean's definitely also going to end up being a player to watch this training camp, because we know just how important he is to the Eagles' defensive success this year. But in regards to the other linebacker spot, we really don't know who's going to end up starting. I mean, the favorite is obviously Nicholas Morrow. The Eagles just went out this offseason and got him from the Bears. He's coming off a career year last year, and he's pretty much been getting better every single year, but there still also definitely are negatives with Nicholas Morrow. I mean, he really only had one good year, that being last year, but it was on a very bad Chicago Bears defense, and he still definitely showed some weaknesses throughout the course of the campaign, and as a result of this, people have questioned whether Morrow will actually end up starting on this Eagles defense this year. Then you have Christian Elliss, who was on the practice squad for a large majority of last year until he was called up to the active roster, and he performed pretty well on special teams, and then obviously this offseason during OTAs, he was one of the big stories of that, as he had some great plays, including a pick six on Jalen Hurts in the second day that was available for the media to watch. So Elliss is definitely going to have a chance to compete for a starting spot as well. Or maybe there's the possibility of the Eagles going out and adding someone new to fill that potential hole. I mean, I feel like everyone expects the Eagles to make at least one more notable move before the start of the regular season. I mean, this is something the Eagles have a knack for. They always seem to be able to add impactful players late in the offseason. They obviously were able to do that last year, and now this year, linebacker is definitely at the top in terms of needs for this team. So if they wanted to go out and make a move and acquire one, what would their options be? Well, easily the most intriguing name, and one that we've heard linked to the Eagles for a while now, is Patrick Queen from the Baltimore Ravens, and it seems like there have been trade rumors surrounding Queen pretty much all offseason, and maybe the Ravens will finally be willing to pull the trigger on a trade for him here in the next few days or weeks. I mean, there's multiple things that hint that Queen could be expendable for the Ravens and make it feel like a move could be coming soon, and this article written by Tim Ham of Sports Illustrated outlines these as he said, quote, "Baltimore recently signed fellow inside linebacker Roquan Smith to a 5-year, $100 million deal. Combine that with the fact that the Ravens did not exercise Queen's 5th-year option, and it looks like his future in Baltimore beyond 2023 may be in jeopardy." And then he also noted that Queen is coming off a career season, saying, quote, "Ravens inside linebacker Patrick Queen is coming off his best season in the NFL. He started all 17 games and managed career highs in tackles, 117, sacks, 5, quarterback hits, 14, interceptions, 2, and passes defended, 6. Queen also forced a fumble and had 2 fumble recoveries. His 117 tackles also led all Ravens defenders." I mean, if it's possible for the Eagles to get Queen, I think that they should be all over it. I mean, for one, it would shore up the linebacker position, and you would get a player that's hungry at that point to prove that he's a difference maker, and he's also a tremendously talented guy, and he's shown that a lot in the league so far, so I would really love this move for the Eagles, and I wouldn't put it past Howie to get this done. But other than him, say the Eagles didn't want to go out and make that move, there are still some other free agent linebackers that the Eagles could potentially look at for really cheap if they felt that that was the right move. So what do you guys think? Do you think the Eagles could go out and add a linebacker during training camp? Let me know down in the comments. But aside from linebacker, there's definitely some other moves out there that the Eagles could make as well. And don't worry, we're going to get into all that and much more, but just real quick here, if you are enjoying this video and want to see others like it coming in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Over 80% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. If you're one of those people, you've been watching the videos consistently, you're enjoying them, and you love the Philadelphia Eagles, make sure you fix that right now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss when any other videos are uploaded in the future. I think that's a win-win for the both of us. And now with that being said, let's get back into the video. So another guy that the Eagles could look to add is Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, this is obviously a guy who's still out there in the free agent market. He's one of the better remaining free agents out there, if not the best, and he's the model of consistently. He's been that throughout the course of his career. He has not had a single season since he's been in the NFL under 8 sacks. Last year, he's coming off 9.5 sacks with the Indianapolis Colts. I don't know why he's still unsigned, and he could definitely still be a big impact player on any defense that he decides to join. So obviously with the Eagles having the best pass rush in the NFL, if you're able to add a 8, 9, 10 sack guy to that defense and to that pass rush, that just makes the defensive unit and the pass rush even scarier. So if the Eagles feel like that would be a good move and you can afford to do it, I definitely would look into it, because it definitely doesn't hurt to add more pass rushers, although adding someone like Ngakoue would then reduce the opportunities that a guy like Nolan Smith has. So that's definitely something the Eagles would have to think about, but still, I think adding Ngakoue at least for one season could be a very good move for this Eagles team, and it could make that Eagles defense a lot better. And something else that can make the defense a lot better is by shoring up that safety position a little bit by adding a star like Budda Baker, who obviously a long time ago this offseason he requested a trade from the Arizona Cardinals, and really ever since then you've seen Budda Baker been linked to the Eagles a lot this offseason. I mean, even if you go back before his trade request was made public back in February when the Eagles were in the Super Bowl, he had some very high praise for head coach Nick Sirianni and the culture that he's been able to build and the attitude he brings to the Eagles locker room. Then you also have the Eagles being the favorites to land Budda Baker once he requested that trade back in April. And then you also have him making public comments regarding the Eagles, praising Jalen Hurts, or not too long ago when he mentioned how the Eagles QB sneak was absolutely unstoppable, and giving respect to the Eagles for running that play and being so successful with it. I don't know, man, this still seems like a long shot to me considering the amount of money that Budda Baker wants to be paid and what you'd end up having to give up in a trade to get him, but I definitely think that a guy like Budda Baker could take this Eagles defense to the next level. So I guess we'll see what happens on that front. Maybe the Eagles make a move, maybe they don't, but regardless, I do think that these are some moves to at least keep your eye on or think about as we get into training camp here. But speaking of the safety position, there's going to be a battle for who gets to start there as well. Now at this current moment, I would expect one of the starters to be Reed Blankenship, the Ghost, as there's been a good amount of talk about him this offseason, and some people have even called him the X Factor for this Eagles team in 2023. Now, I actually made a video not too long ago talking about that, so again, if you want to check that out after this video, you can go do that. But Reed Blankenship also definitely showed some flashes last year. He had some great plays in the limited opportunity that he had, so I would expect that he's going to get his opportunity to start this year because he really has earned it. Now with the other safety spot, I would expect newly acquired safety from the Steelers, Terrell Edmunds, to get the nod there because, I mean, this is for multiple reasons. For one, he's the most experienced guy the Eagles have in the group of safeties that they have, and he's already had a really solid career in his 5 years with the Steelers, and he's just become a really solid player overall. Maybe he's not super flashy, maybe he doesn't make the big game-changing highlight play, but he's just a solid player that gets the job done, and it seemed like the Steelers community was pretty upset to lose him this offseason, so I definitely think Edmunds can be a very good player for this Eagles defense and be serviceable this year if he is the one that ends up getting the nod to start. But don't count out rookie Sidney Brown, who a lot of fans are really excited about, as he apparently has really impressed this entire offseason, and he's a guy that goes out there and gives it 110% every single day, and that's paid off for him so far. And Brown also definitely has a lot of talent, and I think that he can become a very good player for this Eagles team. Now, I don't know if that's this year or at some other time, but I am really just overall super excited about Brown, and I can't wait to see how he performs at training camp. Now, so far, I've only been talking about the defense, but there's still definitely going to be a lot to watch for the Eagles on the offensive side of the ball this training camp as well. Starting with the battle for the wide receiver 3 position, which I think Quez Watkins is obviously going to have the edge, and I mean, he's been here for a few years now. He has the confidence of the coaching staff. Obviously, they've given him a lot of praise this offseason, but still, don't count out Olamide Zaccheaus, the newly acquired wide receiver from the Atlanta Falcons, as he's definitely a good player. He's coming off a pretty good season last year with the Falcons, and the Eagles specifically brought him in to push Watkins and challenge him for his starting job. So, will Oz win it? I don't know, but there's absolutely no secret that this is going to be a really crucial training camp for Quez Watkins and just a crucial season in general. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of people doubting him all offseason, even during the course of last season, because he was having a fair amount of struggles. Obviously, he had some big mistakes in key moments, including in some crucial losses, most notably, obviously, the Super Bowl having a huge drop during that game that potentially, if he had caught that ball, could have changed the outcome of the game. So he definitely is going to have to try to right his wrongs and have a bounce-back season this year. And the start to him righting his wrongs and proving those doubters wrong is him having a good training camp and winning this battle. So I guess we'll have to see how that plays out. Same as I guess we'll have to see how the running back situation plays out here at training camp, because we really don't know how the rotation is going to shake out when the season begins, and even who's going to be the starter. I mean, I've talked a ton about this, obviously, and it's no secret that I and many other Eagles fans think that the starter is going to end up being DeAndre Swift, and I do think that Swift can unlock a whole new level to this Eagles offense because of his elite receiving ability. And of course, Swift has been praised all offseason, and really him and fellow dual threat running back Kenneth Gainwell have been the two running backs getting most of the attention this offseason because of the fact that both of these guys can catch the ball out of the backfield. And obviously, you know, when you don't have pads on, guys that are more of receiving type backs are going to get a chance to shine more because you can kind of gauge their receiving ability when you don't have the pads on, but you can't really gauge their running ability. So now that the pads go on, we're finally going to get a better idea of what the Eagles have in Rashaad Penny. I mean, he might be the best just pure rusher that the Eagles have on their roster right now, and he's finally going to get his chance to show that off, obviously, again, now that the pads go on. So I don't know, if he performs well, is there a chance that he can earn the starting job at running back? I don't know, and I guess we'll just have to see, but I do think that this could be a crucial training camp for Rashaad Penny because he has also been mentioned as a surprise cut candidate with the Eagles, since they do have a running back similar to him in Trey Sermon, who Coach Sirianni, every time he's asked about the running back position, he makes sure to bring up Trey Sermon. It just seems like the Eagles are really high on him in general. Now, obviously, actions speak louder than words, and Trey Sermon only really got a couple carries in one game this past season, so to see you have an actual real shot to make this roster over a guy like Rashaad Penny, I mean, I doubt it. I definitely think Penny's going to make this roster, and I think he's going to be a big contributor for this Eagles team this year. But again, that's going to be something to watch once training camp gets going here. So what do you guys think? What are the best positional battles and players to watch as we get into training camp? And do you think the Eagles could go out and make another big move before the start of the regular season? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions down in the comments. And if you did enjoy this video, make sure you first drop a like on it to show some support, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos coming like this covering Eagles training camp in the future. And also, if you you haven't done so already, make sure you check out some of the YouTube shorts that I've been consistently posting on this channel for a while now. I know there's a portion of you guys that do watch these videos but don't watch the shorts, so just letting you guys know those are out there as well if you're interested, so make sure you check them out. And if you want to watch another video talking about Dallas Goedert's recent comments on Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, as well as an interesting projection for Nolan Smith and more, you can go watch this video right here. Now, with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys, so thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.